And we are back. That was a great segment with Alderman Burnett and his lovely partner, Darlena. We are now facing Tuyet Lay, who I met sometime back in the struggle. She was leading a bunch of really dedicated canvassers, as I recall, and showing up in regular fashion. Really showing up. So Tuyet Lay, you come to this stage already with an incredible record of showing up, and we want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. And so you have been the executive director of Asian Americans Advancing Justice for how long?
Almost 18 years.
18. Gee. You don't want to share any of that job?
Well, fill us in on...
I share my job. I have a lot of folks who do a lot of different things. So, yeah.
So what is what you do mostly right now in Asian Americans Advancing Justice?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the organization.
So we are a policy and organizing group that works on Asian American issues, or with an Asian American lens on civil rights and immigrant rights issues. So that's, this coming Monday, we're going to be participating in the May Day marches. Immigration has been a big part of our work. But our mission is to empower Asian Americans in Illinois, build power, and create equity and justice.
And en route to doing that, I've seen you in coalition with a number of groups.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, given that you're in Uptown, which is one of the port of entries in this city for immigrants and all manner of folks arriving to our shores, this has to have been a pretty intense time since January 28th, when the executive orders began coming.
Yeah.
I was happy that Chicagoans went to O'Hare in the numbers that they did.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm proud of our fellows. So part of the reason that we wanted you here was absolutely to have somebody to cover what's happening in Chicago and all over the country on Monday. So can you describe how you are approaching this event of the May Day March?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this has been in progress for a long time, right? So this is a continuation of the May Day marches that was about a decade ago.
Yeah, what was that? We had the biggest one here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Was it 2008?
It was 2006.
Six.
Yeah.
Oh, it is 10 years.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
I mean, obviously, May Day in general has a history in Chicago, going way back in terms of workers' rights. And so in 2006, when Representative Sensenbrenner put out this really hideous bill criminalizing people who even helped immigrants.
That's right.
There was this huge call out, right, that actually was in March, and there was hundreds of thousands of people, and then there was another bigger one that was organized by a lot of organizers in the immigrant rights movement for May 1st, and that's what actually started galvanizing the marches all over the country. And so there was a series of them afterwards, and this one, I think, is a little bit different in that it'll still be really huge like it was, I think, in 2006 and 2007, but it's a lot more than just immigrant rights folks, right? And I think that's what we've seen right after the elections, that people really thought we have to all get together because we're all being targeted at this point, right? And so, you have not just immigrant rights folks, but the Sierra Club is coming out for this. Obviously, the unions and worker right organizations are still very much involved, but organizers from the Women's March, right, LGBT organizations, indigenous communities, right, so it's like the whole gambit of people who are really feeling targeted by this administration, right? And so I think this is like something that we saw right after the elections. Our work has expanded that way as well. And so I think it's going to be very exciting because it's not just this march, but like there's also feeder marches that start earlier in the day that are going to come to Union Park.
I had a question. Your organization, Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asia is a big place. And so there's a lot of different Asians. And I'm just wondering if there are any particular group or country that has been particularly stressed out or, under more pressure than others in the Asian community.
In this time?
Yeah, in this time. Is it like the Vietnamese or Chinese or, wherever they might be from?
I think it's mostly the South Asian and Muslim communities.
Indonesia?
Well, like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, yeah.
South Asia.
In terms of, South Asian communities that are, some are Muslim and some are perceived as Muslim. And I think that's the targeting that's happening in those communities, right? And because some of them are from those, in countries that were being banned. And then, so, yeah, I think that's it. And then I think that most people don't realize how many undocumented Asian Americans there are, right? It's like 60,000 in Illinois. And so they're from a lot of different countries as well. So, yeah.
May Day, of course, has Chicago roots.
Yes.
And can you speak a little bit to your own knowledge of how the labor movement, which is what May Day is celebrated around the rest of the world as a workers' day, has evolved into this kind of immigrant, refugee-focused effort?
Right.
I think that the idea about immigrants, there's this tension around are immigrants taking jobs or contributing, and I think that the celebration on May Day is that the immigrants in this country are workers contributing to this country, adding value to this country, and so that's why it's taken up on this day, is to say that there is a huge value to immigrants, not just as workers but as human beings, as people who add to the culture of this country, right? That its diversity has always been what has made this country great.
I had a little story I wanted to share, then I see if it works to enhance the conversation. But I was in El Paso the other day to see my kids' band, and there were a group of young people who came across the border from Juarez to see the band, kind of like Juarez hipsters. And I asked this one young woman, I said, what's it like crossing the border these days? She said, oh, it's not bad, it's okay. And then she said, without any prompting, she says, but if my friends who have darker skin, they have a harder time coming across. They get questioned a lot more. And I just thought I'd share that.
I was going to ask Tuyet that thing. I mean, what have you've been at this a long, long time, and you've been in the States most of your life now, since you were, 4 or 3 years old. So, so you understand that we are in a racist society.
I do.
How does it break down? I mean, when you are in coalition with other groups to push sanctuary, to push citizens or safe passage, whatever, how do you deal with the racism? You just started by saying there's 60,000, unpapered folks, Asian folks, but in this country, we mostly zero in on darker-skinned people or people of color from the South or Muslims, as you said. How do you be a good ally when someone is being chased harder than you? Is that that's a weird question, but
no, she's going to work it out. I see her getting ready.
Right. I mean, I think that for East Asians, I think we both have to recognize certain levels of privilege we have, but as we've seen from this last United case, we're not escaping that kind of police violence either, right? And so it's it's complicated for Asian Americans, I think, because of in some cases the class that protects us,
a different status.
But I think that we're fooling ourselves into thinking that we're somehow beyond that, right? Because cases like the New York police officer Peter Liang, cases like the engineer in Kansas, the engineers in Kansas who were shot dead after somebody, right? So people don't associate Asian Americans as being victims, but it's catastrophic when they are, right? Because it just, you're okay when they allow you to be okay, and then when they are tired of it, people snap.
Very well said.
Asian Americans advancing justice, to my ears and eye, are one of those classic behind-the-scenes NGOs that no one outside your community knows about very well, and possibly even within your community, because
we know now.
But you've been around a long time, and one of those, I think, critical support organizations, not just for Asian Americans, but actually for the rest of our community, for the richness that all of our immigrants bring to this picture.
Yeah. Well, hopefully
How-
we're more than just behind the scenes, because we're leading on the Trust Act too.
Well, that's what I want to
Yeah.
get to here, because you're not a brand name, but your doors have been open a long time. How do you keep those doors open? Where is the support coming from? Has it increased? Has it gotten better? Is your visibility such, as you work with other groups, that the resources are still flowing? Because it's not an easy environment.
Right. So we actually we're celebrating our 25th year this year.
25.
Yeah, we just had a big party last week.
Oh, I wish we knew.
Too bad we didn't have you on before that.
And and we changed our name actually a few years ago. It used to be Asian American Institute, and we did
Right.
that because we're now a part of a larger affiliation around the country called Asian Americans Advancing Justice. So there's an affiliate in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Atlanta, and Washington, D.C. And so I think nationwide it's starting to grow in terms of reputation. We do work in coalition with a lot of different communities, and we've been very lucky to get a lot of foundation support. There's a national foundation that has supported us and the other affiliates. And so, I think in Chicago it's a little bit harder. I mean, we do have foundation, some corporate support, some individuals. We don't really take state or federal money because as an advocacy organization, we really don't want to be beholden to that, because that's usually who we are. I won't say fighting, but advocating.
But you did.
with, right?
You said
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those non-statements.
I was going to ask you, are you still on the board of Access Living?
I am. Yes. Yeah.
Also a great group
Yes.
working to protect a whole segment of society and shine light on some real injustice that happens to folks with disabilities, visible or not
Yes.
disabilities. So, Michael, what? You want to say something?
Katie, I'm just getting in line.
Okay.
You finish your question. and
I wanted
I'll
to
get mine in the last
I just
20
feel like
seconds.
that's also a group that is stands to lose if we are if the current administration gets what they want.
Yeah.
Less health care,
Yeah.
less housing. Specific housing programs
Right.
that
Absolutely. Yeah, that's right. And so on Inauguration Day, we launched what we called this is a communications campaign called 100 Days of Resistance. And what we wanted was not just to bring together the Asian American community, but bringing together people who are working on all these different issues, right? So Access Living was a part of our campaign. There's an African American arts group that was a part of our campaign, just really lifting up different voices and each of us echoing each other's work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, absolutely, the disabilities community, this healthcare bill, I mean, a lot would be lost if that were actually able to be repealed, Obamacare.
yeah. Go ahead.
Tuyet, one of the things I like to ask our guests is how they became involved in the struggle, the movement for a better life for all.
Yeah.
How did you get involved?
Well, I mean, I think my activism started when I was in college, and I was trying to get Asian American Studies on my college campus.
Where was that?
It was at Northwestern. So they finally approved a major last year, and so that's like over 2 decades.
Well, you
in the
planted the
making.
seeds.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think a lot of it, though, actually has to do with my history as a refugee from Vietnam, right? And the way I grew up. And not to say that that fueled my activism per se in terms of activities, but it definitely was why I understand the world in a social justice lens.
Wow. Tuyet,
Good.
we need to wrap this up because we got a couple great musicians stepping up here. Will you come back again sometime?
Anytime. I'm only 5 minutes away.
I know. You're right here in the hood. Thank you so much, Tuyet Lay, for your work, and see you on the streets Monday.
Absolutely.
At the May Day marches that are happening all over the city. The feeder marches, I'm glad you mentioned. But if you just want to get to the march, Union Park. That name went away from me for a minute. Union Park, Monday at what time? 10?
Starts at 1.
1.
Yeah.
Starts
there's
at 1.
The earlier one, but the march itself starts at 1.
Yeah.
Thanks for your leadership, and next time we'll talk about Vietnam.
That's okay.
Or a few other things,
Hallelujah.
where you eat in the neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.